1-0.
Greetings, fellow barbarians. It is I, Alan Odinson, and this is the Barbarian Lounge podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining me this evening. Got a pretty good show lined up for you today. A subject that came up on I think it was some post I saw on some survival board or whatever, and some guy had wrote an article regarding this particular topic, and being someone who really is kind of what I would consider a professional at this particular topic, I figured I would do a show on it because there's a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of pros and cons, a lot of things that we can talk about as it relates to this particular subject. But let's get a few things out of the way here before we get started. First off, our website, thebarbarianlounge.com. You can go there, check it out. We've got a lot of different options on there. I urge you to go there and please check out the donate button. You can click there. We've got a couple different options for you there. We've got one-time PayPal donations where you just donate however much you want to just to say thanks. We've got options to shop under our affiliates, meaning like one of them is Amazon. You can go to Amazon. You click on that particular link that's there, bookmark that link, and anytime you shop on that particular link, we actually get a small percentage of that. It's not much, but hey, every little bit helps. But the way that I suggest for most people to get the most out of their money is to become a member on our Patreon site. By becoming a member on Patreon, you get our 4 regular shows early ahead of everybody else, but you also get 4 exclusive broadcasts that are only available on Patreon. It allows me to, since the people there are putting a little more skin in the game, it allows me to talk about some things I don't normally like to talk about on the air. Sometimes we do continuations of episodes, such as the last episode I did on Michael Strickland. I actually did a part 2 on that for our members section, and that was a very, very powerful episode, because while the first episode talked about basically what happened, the second episode talked about what you can do to make sure you don't ever find yourself in that particular situation. So a lot of good stuff on there. You get a lot of good feedback, and basically what you do is you just donate per episode. $1 minimums. A lot of people do $1. Some people do $3. Some people do $5. However much you want to do, it's on a per episode basis. We do no more than 8 episodes there per month. So if you do $1 per episode, that comes up to, you can easily do the math, it comes up to $8 a month to help support the show. Why do I need money, right? Why do I need money to run this show? Well, there's a lot of things that go on kind of behind the scenes here. You guys know I've been very vocal as it relates to Antifa, and we do get some attacks from here, and I've had to up the security on the particular network that I run here. On some of my different websites, we get regular denial of service attacks there, and we've had to put some safeguards in, and unfortunately that costs money, costs revenue to do so. Plus, we're also looking to take the show to a few different avenues. I'm looking to do some on-the-road shows, and there's some different gear that I'm going to need for that, and what can I say? I would like to get a little bit of support from the listeners out there. Most of podcasts and everything, a lot of people don't really realize a lot of the work that goes into doing a regular show. That combined with running my other business and everything, I kind of burn the candle at both ends. So it's always nice to have a little bit of help from the Barbarian Horde out there. So please go there, become a member. It's a win-win situation, and I'm looking to offer a lot more advantages for the members in the coming year. So stay tuned for that. Anything that we do here that's going to be exclusive, I can guarantee you, if you're a listener, that if you are a member, you will get first crack at it. So please go there. Go to patreon.com/thebarbarianlounge. Give us a donation there per episode. It costs you $8 a month to support the show. Help keep the lights on in this place, right? Also, check out our sponsors. Mitacon, MitaconUSA.com. That's Mita-ConUSA.com. I'll do my awesome commercial voice here. Mitacon, with a proper diet, supports the cell's fastest, most effective absorption of natural nutrients in each 250 milliliter bottle and sustains the body's mitochondria generation of usable energy, key to producing ATP, the energy-rich fuel the body needs to achieve peak athletic strength, performance, endurance, and recovery. That's my commercial voice. And I can tell you one of the things that's not listed on the bottle that I mainly use Mitocon for is recovery. Man, I don't think, what was recovery on there? Yeah, recovery was the last fucking thing I said. So, that shows you where my brain's at. Recovery is one of the great things that I use Mitocon for a lot of times. I've recently got back into powerlifting again, and I'm starting to see my numbers go back up, and I'll be honest with you, I can tell a difference when I'm not drinking Mitocon and when I am. So go there, check them out, mitoconusa.com. Also, you can check out Odinson Archery, odinsonarchery.com. Go there, get your traditional bows made from non-traditional materials. A lot of different options there, and as I've been kind of teasing it a little bit, guys. If you're interested in getting anything from Odinson Archery, I'm going to advise you to do so very soon, because the schedule may start to fill up very quickly. So there's some big things coming in the future for Odinson Archery. So please check them out, odinsonarchery.com. Traditional bows made from non-traditional materials. So let me make sure I've got everything. Oh yeah, our other site, thebarbarianlounge.podbean.com. That's our host site. You can go there, give a subscription, and follow the show there as well. Also, iTunes and Stitcher, you can find us. UCY.tv, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. You can check us out there. They run some of our past shows. There's a live chat that goes on. You can talk with other people about the show. So, talking about OdinsonArchery.com, that's going to lead a bit of a segue into the topic we're going to be covering today. And I don't want this to really be like a commercial, because I want this to be really about this particular article I saw. Basically, this article was talking about best archery equipment for a shit hit the fan type of situation, survival scenario. You know, they use it in a lot of different terminology. I'll just use shit hit the fan as a easy general term. So the question was, what is the best archery equipment for a shit hit the fan situation? And the three ideas they were running were the recurve bow, the compound bow, and the crossbow, which those are basically the main style bow. My Mitocon here, so if you hear me taking a sip, just please forgive me. Those are basically the main ones. I mean, when I read the article initially, you can tell it was written by somebody who did not have a lot of experience in the world of archery. Basically, they had a general knowledge of what bows are and what they do, but as far as actual practical skill in using the equipment, they may shoot some compound. I mean, I don't know, but from my opinion, I would say that they had a very limited exposure to a lot of different bows, because while you do have compound bow, you do have the crossbow, and you do have the recurve bow, you've also got the self bow, which is, you got self bows, you got composite bows, which honestly, I kind of put composite and self in the same category. Basically, when I say self, I'm talking about kind of a one-piece system that is this basically, it doesn't necessarily have a riser or whatnot, like a lot of the more modern recurves have right now, such as, I'll give you an example, such as a lot of the bows that we sell at Odinson Archery. Odinson Archery uses mostly like self bows. You don't really see much of a riser on there. It's basically one piece. Your long bows, like your English long bows, your English war bows, which are two different things. A lot of people say long bow is kind of a general term for English archers, but they actually had a long bow and a war bow, which are two different things. So, you know, those are typically self bows. Your recurves fall under the category of exactly as it sounds. Your recurves tend to have kind of the curved tips on them and everything like that, exactly as it sounds. Has a good bit of which actually that adds to the speed a good bit. And I try to, even though a lot of the bows from Odinson Archery are technically self bows, that I usually include a bit of a curvature towards the ends that give them a little bit of that recurve feel. So I think a lot of times when people use the term recurve, that they're basically throwing self bows in there. So I would basically say self bow recurve, kind of self bow / recurve, and compound and crossbow. So the question initially was, what is the best? Like if you needed one of these for a shit at the fan situation, what's the best way to go? Now the general consensus of the article was the best way to go was a compound or a crossbow. That was the general consensus. Now, when I read that automatically told me that the individual who wrote the article does not have a lot of experience with recurves and self-bows. So I'm going to map out a few of the pros and cons of the different styles and why you should choose one or the other, or why I would suggest choosing one over the other. Now, naturally, the tool that you choose is going to be very dependent on your situation. Needless to say, I'm going to make a suggestion, but I can tell you right now, as I'm sitting right here in the lounge, I'm looking around on my wall here, and I've got several compound bows, several recurves, an English longbow. I've got a crossbow sitting over here, so I'm not biased towards one or the other. I use all of them. So this isn't something that I'm just trying to sell you a product. I'm going to tell you the honest pros and cons of each. And I'll tell you my experiences with them, experiences with other people, and even historical experiences that people have had with these particular bows, and let you go from there as far as your decision. So starting off with recurve bows. Now I will say in this article, and this is one of the things I guess that kind of peeved me to start with, was that the consensus was that a recurve bow is not going to be anything that you're going to want to use for anything more than small game or target shooting. As someone who has hunted with a recurve bow, I will tell you that individual who stated that is full of a gigantic pile of horse shit. With the right arrow, a recurve bow, a right arrow and a right shot, a recurve bow will easily kill anything on the continent of North America. Easily. And you don't even need a super heavy bow. That's one of the things that people think a lot of times about recurves. They're like, oh, well, they don't get 250 plus feet per second like compounds and crossbows do. You do not need that much speed to kill an animal. Most recurves that are pushing under 150 feet per second with a correct arrow will easily, and a razor sharp broadhead will easily pass through and through the target. No problem whatsoever. So there's one of the things a lot of people get at, man, is they get caught up in this speed game, and I think it's because we live in a gun culture, and with firearms, the feet per second tends to be a really big deal. Now, obviously, you don't want something traveling too slow because you want to get a good clean kill, but you have to understand that you don't need an ass ton of speed out of your arrow in order to really drive it through the target. Ideally, with an arrow, what you're looking for is weight. You want a good heavy arrow. Obviously, you need a decent amount of speed, but basically you need a good heavy arrow. A lot of people, for instance, I'll give an example here in South Carolina. When a lot of people hog hunt here, they try and use the lighter grain arrows, 450, 500 grain arrows to hunt hogs around here with their compounds. And what they'll find a lot of times is they'll hit that hog right in the side where that shield's at on him, and really thick bone there. And the arrow will not go deep enough, will not penetrate through. That doesn't do you any good when you're trying to kill a hog. You're just going to probably piss him off. So what they found is the same thing that old school war archers found, was that use a heavier arrow, 800 grain plus, probably pushing a little closer to 900 grains. Very, very heavy arrow, a lot of drop in it. However, what it does is it hits like a freaking train. A lot of people think I need that super fast arrow. Well, you have to understand that as soon as that arrow leaves the bow, it's going to start slowing down. When it hits something solid, once it hits, it's going to start slowing down even more. I liken it to a good example that I use with people when I'm talking about arrows and how much speed you need out of your bow and all these things like that. I always tell people, I'm like, use a heavy arrow, use a heavy arrow. I liken it to this. You take let's take a pickup truck. You take a pickup truck, let's just say like a Ford F-150, right? You take a Ford F-150, and it's sitting in the road, and a Prius comes as fast as a Prius can go. Let's say you got your Prius, you managed to get your Prius up to 60 miles an hour. You got it up to 60 miles an hour, and it rams into the side of the F-150. Well, obviously it's going to hit it hard. It's going to do a lot of damage to that F-150, for sure, going at that speed with the weight of the car and everything. Okay, take the same scenario, but instead of a Prius, you insert an 18-wheeler. But the 18-wheeler is only going 30 miles an hour. Which of the two is going to do more damage? The 18-wheeler is going to do more damage. It's the same as like a train. If you've got the same scenario, an 18-wheeler running into something going extremely slow, or going somewhat fast versus an 18-wheeler, or let me rephrase that. Take an 18-wheeler going the same speed as a train and have them both hit the same object. Which is going to do more damage? The train with more weight. And that's the same way your arrows are. While your light arrows are great and they're traveling fast and that's always great and all that, ideally you want a good heavy arrow to get good penetration. A lot of people just they get caught up in this whole game of how fast can I get my bow to go and all stuff like that. At the end of the day, you'll find a lot of times one of the most important aspects of your bow is not necessarily going to be how great your bow is, but how good your arrow setup is. And of course, there's a lot of different arrows, and some people get very much arrow snobbish, I guess you can say, where this is the best arrow, that's the best arrow, and all this stuff like that. Ideally, it all depends on how you build it up and what you're shooting it out of. I can take arrows that aren't spined, which when I say spined, if you don't understand that, that's basically talking about the flex in the arrow. I can talk about arrow spine. A lot of people, you can get an arrow that's spined for, say, a 60-pound bow and shoot it out of a 25-pound bow, and yeah, you'll get a little weirdness out of it, but you'll still, if you're doing everything correctly, you'll hit the mark. So a lot of times it just depends on how well that arrow's set up, because there's a lot of hacks you can do to your arrow to make it fly a little straighter. One little quick, I'll give you this little tidbit for free. If you've got an arrow that is not spined correctly to shoot out of a bow, say you've got an arrow that's spined for, let's say a 65-pound bow, but you're shooting it out of a 30-pound bow, and you go to shoot it, if you've ever shot an arrow that's not spined correctly, what will happen is since the arrow's not flexing, it'll actually swing really wide, and it kind of does a weird like fishtail motion. A nice little hack is you can add weight to the front of the arrow. You can use heavy inserts, you can use a heavier grained broadhead or target tip, whatever, and that arrow will correct its spine when you shoot it. It's a neat little hack that I've used in the past. If I've got arrows, if I need to shoot an arrow that's not really spined correctly, I'll just add a lot of weight to it, to the front of it, and it'll straighten itself out. So it's a pretty neat little trick you can do. But one of the big things that a lot of people don't really think about as it relates to recurves and self bows, they get caught up in the whole speed thing, but the main thing they fuss about is the draw weight on it. With a recurve bow, a differences between it and a compound. With a recurve bow, when you draw it back, you're behind that weight the whole time. I cannot tell you how many people have purchased bows from me in the past, and they're like, oh, I shoot a 70-pound compound, I'll get a 55-pound recurve bow from you, or an assassin bow. That's our international best-selling bow. It's a Mongolian-style horse bow. I'll get a 55-pounder from you. Then they get it and they realize, holy shit, I can't pull this. Yeah, it's not like a compound. There's not any let off. When you pull that 55 pounds, when you lock it in position, you got to hold it there. So you'll find that I find a lot of guys that shoot a lot of compound, they stay away from recurves like they're the plague. I know a lady who's a championship archer, and she's a compound shooter. And I try to get her to shoot the recurves and the self bows that I have, and she's like, no, thank you. She doesn't want anything to do with them, just because it's a completely different game. There's a lot, and I'll talk about some of the differences mainly once I get to the section on the compounds. But a lot of people do not like that draw, and the main reason, it's heavy, and it's like, oh man, you're gonna have to hold it the whole time. Well, If you use correct back tension, which is something that, I can teach you in person. When I teach my students, I teach them the correct back tension and all these things like that, and really use your back in the draw and lock into position correctly. You should be able to hold that bow plenty enough time to make a good shot. Plenty. One of the big problems a lot of shooters have, especially if they come from the world of compound, is that they get so used to lining up sights, and they sit there all day long holding that bow, and they think they have to do that with a recurve. If you do everything correctly, you shouldn't have to hold that long, especially making a lot of the range shots that most people shoot. So a lot of people get caught up in the whole draw. Oh, it's harder to pull back and everything like that. When I hear people say that, I have to look at them, and especially like if you've seen the movie The 13th Warrior, where the Vikings hand the Saracen, they hand him one of the big swords, and he says it's too heavy to swing. They look at him, they're like, get stronger, right? That's what I say, get stronger. But a lot of people don't want to really move to the level of stifling that ego. You guys have heard me talk about stifling the ego, right? They don't want to stifle that ego and say, you know what? I need to use a lighter weight bow. And I liken it to people, and I get adults that get very offended by this when they come to class and they want to learn, and I hand them a 25-pound children's bow. And they're like, what am I supposed to do with this? I'm like, you're supposed to learn your fucking form. You think about it. When anybody who ever learned to shoot a firearm, did you start out with a 44 Magnum, or did you start out with a 22? Obviously a 22. If you start out with a 44 Magnum, you probably can't hit the broadside of a barn now. So a lot of people, they start you out with a 22 because it has light recoil and it's easy to learn the fundamentals. That's the same reason that I start people out with a lightweight bow. And another thing too, just talking about lightweight bows, again with the correct arrow, the correct bow, the correct model, all these a lot of different things that go in there. A 30-pound bow or a 35-pound bow is plenty enough to kill most things you're going to run into. I know that probably offends a lot of people in the archery world to think that I would say such a thing, but when I clock the speeds a lot of times, you would be amazed at the speed you can get out of those particular bows. And like I said before, speed's not even a huge issue. The massive penetration that you can get with them, with a good arrow and a good broadhead, and a well-placed shot. Of course, that's a big thing as well. There's a lot of different hacks that I've learned over the years. I'll tell you this, if you ever meet me in person or you take one of my classes, which, spoiler alert, I'm going to be doing a lot more instruction this year as it progresses. Right now, I'm doing a little bit of local instruction, but you're going to see it get a little bigger in the future here. But if you ever meet me in person, I can show you. I can take a bow. This is just a little side piece. I can take a bow of, let's say, a 30-pound draw weight, same arrow, and I can shoot it and get, 145 feet per second out of it. Get 145 feet per second. Then I can take the bow, use a different technique, same arrow, same bow, nothing's changed, just a different technique I use, and get up to 165 to 170 feet per second. Just with a nice little trick that I know. So, if you ever meet me in person, that'll be some of the things we'll be teaching in person. But I'll gladly show that to anybody that ever wants to come see me and wants any archery lessons. So, it's a neat little trick. It's not anything fancy. I'm not slinging it to make it go faster and all this shit like that. It's just it's a nice little trick that I actually picked up from the Saracen archery book. So it's a really, really cool trick. But one of the things that a lot of people don't think about as it relates to recurve bows as well, compared to the other two options, is ammunition. Ammunition is a huge thing, especially when you're talking like a shit hit the fan situation. With a shit hit the fan situation with a recurve, you should never have any issue with ammunition. That's not the case with a compound or a crossbow. Because you can't shoot wooden arrows out of a compound or a crossbow, at least not safely. You might be able to get away with it, but you also might get an arrow through the face, okay, or through the arm, or through the hand. In a shit hit the fan situation, you don't want that. You will not run into that, for the most part, out of recurve bows. They were made to shoot this particular way. So if I'm out in the field and I lose an arrow, which, let me tell you something, if you've ever done any archery, I don't care whether it's compound shooting, whatever it may be, you're going to lose your fucking arrows. Okay, ammunition is going to be something that's going to be a perishable thing. You may think, oh, I've got bright color Fletcher and everything. No, trust me when I say you will lose your fucking arrows. I send bows to people with arrows all the time, and they'll send me a message 2 days later, say, hey, I need some more arrows. I lost the ones you sent me. So I mean, it happens. So and the thing is in the field you can easily replenish your ammunition. Not going to be the case. So if you're talking shit hit the fan situation, you don't want to depend on just having unlimited carbon arrows, unlimited aluminum arrows, whatever it may be. You don't want to depend on that. You absolutely don't want to depend on that. However, when it comes, and I've listed a lot of pros for the recurve, and obviously you can tell I've got a lot of recurve experience. I prefer recurve, all these things like that. But from a con standpoint, you do run into issues with accuracy. Some people are going to run into issues with accuracy just because it takes longer to become proficient with a recurve. Once you do become proficient, however, accuracy is not going to be any problem for you whatsoever. As I said, 50-yard bullseyes are no thing, and it's something that I can do now, and I've shot mine accurately up to 100 yards. So it's very possible to make good shots. Obviously, you wouldn't do any hunting shots like that, but if you can make 50-yard bullseyes, inside 30 yards, which is where most people hunt at, is going to be. It's going to be a slam dunk every time. But it does require a lot more training in order to get good at it. So that's one of the things that turns a lot of people away. They get very frustrated. Can't hit the target. Can't do this. Can't do that. The arrow keeps coming off my riser or my rest, my hand, whatever it may be. And a lot of people get very, very frustrated at it. Especially when you start talking about with self bows, because then you run into Archer's Paradox. If you don't know what Archer's Paradox is, just give it a quick Google. It's basically the way the arrow moves around the bow. Moves like a snake. It oscillates back and forth, and that's one of the reasons why a good spined arrow is important. So that's one of the huge issues. Of course, I talked about draw weight before. People bitch about draw weight and everything like that, and that's cool. If they want to be weak and everything like that, that's cool. That's all right. But ideally, most of the time, why people move away from recurve is the fact of, oh shit, it takes a lot of practice to get good at it. And they're correct. It absolutely does. But if you really want to start talking about shit hit the fan, and you want to talk about the advantages that you can have as a recurve shooter, and the main one is ammunition, it's worth doing the training. It really is. Take a class, get a bow and just practice. It's very easy. Stifle your ego, get something light to start with, and go with that. One of the things that I have at Odinson Archery, a quick commercial break here. One of the things I have at Odinson Archery is a Brotherhood of the Bow Pack, and that includes a full power bow as well as a training bow, and with arrows, a quiver, broadheads, all the bells and whistles that you could possibly need. Right? Very, very affordably priced compared to any other place you're going to find. And the reason I sell it that way is because I advise people to do most of their reps with a training bow. Get that form right. Once that form gets right, you're not going to have any issues with trying to get your accuracy on point. Case in point with my students, for about, I'd say 8 months, I had them mostly shooting from 10 yards and in. A lot of times, most of the time, very close, like 5 yards in. And I constantly work with them on form. Well, the very first class of this year, I got them warmed up at close range, of course, as usual. And then I walked them back to about 20 yards. I said, okay, do the same thing. And everybody, bang, 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 bullseye. Moved them back to 30 yards. Everybody, bang, bang, bang. Right on the money every time. Hit good kill shots every time. But they never shot that way before. And I just told them, once you get your form correctly and your arrow's going straight, it just becomes a game of angles and what your arc is of your shot. So, obviously it requires a lot more work than a lot of people are going to want to put into it, of course. So, it is what it is. Another good advantage also of the recurve is that there are takedown models that you can take apart and slip in your pack. Odinson Archery has several takedown models, very lightweight, that can fit in a very small pack, and you can also get other takedown models as well, but you're not going to find any as affordable as Odinson Archery, so just leave it at that. So onto the compounds. Compound bows. The advantages of compound bows is obviously the let-off on the draw. Meaning with a compound bow, when you draw it back, once it reaches a certain point, there's a break. So a lot of them have a huge let-off. So say your compound bow is 60 pounds, or let's say 60, 70 pounds, right? It'll have a huge let-off. So once you get it to full draw, you'll only be holding like 15, 20 pounds. So it enables people to shoot much heavier bows than they normally could because of that let-off. The other advantage is also all the crazy sights and stuff they have out there. You know, there's a lot of different sights. There's sights that you can get where you can shoot wonderfully at 150 yards. I mean, it's just, of course, that's going to cost you probably the price of a car, but you know, they are out there. You know, but one of the problems that you run into with compounds. Let me say this before I get into the problems. Other advantages, obviously the speed. The arrow speed you can get out of your compound is unbelievable. But as I said before, the arrow speed is almost too much in a sense. The reason most people get compounds, honestly, is not so much due to the arrow speed. They're like, oh, this is a super fast bow. No, they get them because they're easier to use. And I will absolutely 100% say they are easier to use. I just started shooting sights maybe 6-7 months ago. The first time I took it out of the range with my bow sighted in, I was shooting 80, 100 yards bullseyes with it in no time. So and it was just because all the fundamentals were already there from shooting recurve. I will say, if you get good with recurve, you will be an absolute assassin with a compound. So even if you've never shot sights before, so that's one of the big advantages with it. Now, obviously, disadvantages again are the arrows. If you don't have your carbons, if you don't have your carbons break, aluminum arrows bend, if you don't have those, what do you have? You're not going to have anything. So that bow is going to become useless if you start losing arrows. And a lot of people don't keep a lot of arrows. I can tell you right now, I'm looking across the room right here, and I've got buckets full of fucking arrows. Okay, so I'm not running out of arrows anytime soon, but I also understand how quickly that they get lost. They get broken. Things happen with your arrows. If you pop it in an animal takes off, they may break it during the run. That's absolutely possible. And even with that, you think about the broadheads that you use. Most of your carbon arrows are going to take screw-on broadheads. Well, what happens first off, how many broadheads do you have? How many broadheads do you have? How many tips do you have for hunting small game? Okay? So let's say you only have 6 broadheads. Well, there's a good chance that those 6 broadheads are only going to get you 6 large animals. And that's if you hit all 6 of them. Broadheads have the tendency to bend, break, and all these good things. So once you lose your broadheads, what are you going to do for arrow tips? That's the other advantage of using wooden arrows. In a pinch, of course. Obviously, if I had the choice, I'm going to use carbons all day long. But wooden arrows, in, say, like a shit at the fan situation, I can nap stone, I can nap glass, I can use steel, I can use aluminum. There's a lot of different options I can use for my arrow tips for wooden arrows. You don't have that option with a compound. The other big thing too, which this is a big one for me, especially, is with a compound, if you have any problems with your string, if anything becomes compromised on your bow, you're going to need special equipment in order to work on it. Compound bows, they are working machinery, so you're going to need special equipment. They're going to need a certain level of maintenance done to them. If you have to replace your string, guess what? You're going to need a fucking bow press, and you're going to need somebody that knows what the hell they're doing. If I have a problem with my recurve, if I have a problem with the string, you know what? All I need is my leg and a new string, and I can take it off, replace it. I'm done in 2 minutes, and that's if I'm working slow. Okay, it's not that easy of a process with a compound bow. So if anything ever happens to your string, if it wears out, if you have a problem with your cams, which if you don't know what cams are, those are the wheels at the end of the compound. If you have any problems with those, you're going to be fucked unless you know somebody who's got a bow press that is going to be able to work on that. So that becomes a big issue. The other issue with compounds is going to be the weight. You're going to run into a weight issue. I urge you, if you're talking about shit hit the fan, I tell people all the time when they talk about survival and shit hit the fan, most people don't even put their packs and shit on and throw it on their back and walk around with it. Now factor that in with carrying around a compound bow with all of your fancy bells and whistles. That weight is going to be a big deal, especially if you're carrying other firearms with you as well, which I would hope that you are in a shit hit the fan situation. I would not want my bow to be my primary weapon. So those are things you run into. And I don't want this to make it sound like I'm just downing all the stuff with compounds, but if we're talking situation, if we're talking about just hunting and I'm just out trying to get a deer and then once I get the deer I can go home, probably a compound is going to be a little better choice for the novice to intermediate level archer. Even for advanced archers, depending on what you're shooting, the compound is going to offer a lot of advantages. But when we're talking in the level of shit hit the fan, we're talking about something I'm going to have to carry. We're talking about something I have to worry about ammunition with. That becomes a big problem. Becomes a huge problem. So you need to those things really need to be factored in. I don't think the author of the particular article is really thinking about those. And that brings us to the crossbow. I will tell you straight up, I can't stand crossbows. I've had several crossbows and I've hated them all. And I'll tell you why everybody likes crossbows. Everybody likes crossbows because, one, it's like a gun, and two, because they like The Walking Dead. That's why people like crossbows. The Walking Dead has done more for crossbows than anything in the history of archery, crossbowdom. With crossbows, what you run into, my experience with crossbows is, one, they're not as quiet as you think they are, at all. That's one of the big ones. Two, they are very, very freaking heavy. Very, very heavy. And they're also very cumbersome to carry through the woods. If you got a crossbow slung across your back, it's catching the branches as you're walking. It's heavy as hell. I mean, you just run into a lot of issues with crossbows. I think most people who use crossbows, they basically use them because they like shooting rifles and they want something they can hunt with during archery season. But and there's a lot of places that won't even let you use crossbows anymore. But I have never had any joy for crossbows. They're very slow to reload. If you've ever tried, I know on TV they show you reloading a crossbow. You just put your foot in the stirrup, grab it, pull it up, and it's ready to go. Right? You can shoot like boom, boom. You can shoot your shots that fast. Hell fucking no, it's not that easy. Even on something like a 100 pound, 150 pound crossbow, there's all manner of special mechanism that you need to hook to that thing to get it back easily so you're not killing yourself. Okay? It is a process to reload a fucking crossbow. And that's one of the big things that I greatly dislike about them. And honestly, as far as like ranges and stuff like that, you don't get that good a range, and you honestly don't get that good a penetration with them. The arrows tend to be very light. You can't really weight them down a whole lot. And it's really, if you look at even the history of the crossbow was designed as something that the average person could grab and shoot. And that is obviously one of the advantages. If you know how to shoot a rifle, well, once you figure out the complicated loading process, a crossbow, it's the same thing, right? You just shoot it like a rifle, right? But I can tell you, people that love crossbows have never tried to freaking carry one around through the woods. They are a pain in the ass. And if you talk about reloading it, if you talk about the sighting in, and there's so many headaches that come with crossbows. And then you run into the same thing. You've got your compound type crossbows as well as like a recurve style crossbows. They're all the same fucking headache. Granted, you can possibly redo the string on a recurve crossbow, but you're going to need a stringer to get it on there. So it's just an overall pain in the ass. My advice to you, especially when you're talking about shit at the fan, stay away from crossbows. The only way I would use a crossbow would be as setting up some sort of booby trap, or if I just wanted one because it was cool. I have a couple of medieval crossbows, And I like them because they're just cool, right? It's something that you can pull out and go, hey, look at this crossbow. And they're a good thing to take out and have fun shooting. But again, we're talking shit at the fan. Shit hit the fan situation, fuck a crossbow. Stay away from that. So now, a couple of things that I've kind of laid out the pros and cons of each one. Obviously, I lean a little more towards recurve because I'm thinking about a shit hit the fan situation, right? I'm thinking about all the pros and cons. Ammunition, obviously, for the recurve is there. Stringing's not a problem. And in a pinch, I could take some 550 paracord and make a string for a recurve. It wouldn't be a very good string at all, but it would still work if need be. So, and if you're talking about, matter of fact, the first bows I ever made, I used paracord string on them. A lot of people use 550 paracord. 550 paracord is very heavy, but I will tell you a little nice little hack here. You can use 325 paracord. Works okay. It works a lot better than 550. Obviously, if I had to make a bowstring, and all I had was 550 paracord, I would actually, because I know how to make strings, I would actually gut the 550 paracord and use the internals to make a Flemish twist string. But that's just me personally. So, one of the things, I will say this, I'm going to throw out a few things for the archer to be, who thinks about using a bow for a survival type situation. I want to throw out a few things for them to think about. And these are important aspects, because one of the common things that people tell me is they want to get a bow because they want to use it to, I can hunt small game. That's what I hear. I can hunt small game and it's quiet and everything like that. And yes, it's absolutely quiet. And yes, you can hunt small game. However, you're going to need to spend some time with your bow and actually get good at shooting at least 20 yards. Because I can tell you something. I've used my bow to hunt dove. There used to be a little tree bush type area at a place I used to be at in this field there, and I could usually get about 20 yards before I'd stir the doves up and they take off running. So I learned real quickly that I had to use a small game head, and about 20 yards, that's about where you can pop them. And you're talking about something the size of a dove, okay? Hitting it at 20 to 25 yards. So you need to really practice with that bow to get good with hitting something like small game. Something like a fucking rabbit. I have come so close to hitting a rabbit. I almost hit a rabbit on the run one time, and he ran behind the place I was at. There was pallets stacked up, and he took off running, and I shot where I expected him to be. Not really. It was just kind of an instinctive shot, and it hit the pallet just as he passed by. So if the pallet hadn't been there, I think it would have been a dead-on hit. So it's kind of one of those coulda, shoulda, woulda things, right? But the rabbit lived that day. But a lot of people, man, even when you're talking about squirrels, I mean, squirrels don't let you get close to them. 20 yards, you need to be very proficient with your bow at 20 yards. And it's absolutely possible all day long, 100%. You shouldn't have any trouble with any bow, especially something like a compound. You shouldn't have any trouble hitting something at 20 yards with it. You really shouldn't. With the correct repetitions and the correct training with a recurve, you shouldn't have any trouble hitting something at 20 yards. But you need to spend time with your weapon. You need to understand the tool that you're using. And a lot of people don't really get that. Now, another big aspect is, because we're talking shit at the fan here. So, obviously with that comes certain caveats. And one of them is fighting with your bow, having to take the life of a human predator. And this is one of the things that I think there's a bit of misinformation about, as far as like actually the hunting of man, I guess you can say, or fighting with a bow. One of the things that I'm known for, a term that I coined, even though other people have stolen it and all these things like that, is the term modern combat archery. With modern combat archery, most combat archers, I wanted to separate myself from combat archery, because with combat archery, those guys train basically kind of with a LARP mentality to fight other guys with bows. They fight the same way that they would have when they fought in medieval times, or the Mongolians or whatever like that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of valid points to that. With modern combat archery, I sought to set up a system of fighting with a bow against someone who's armed with more modern weapons, such as a firearm. And there's a completely different mentality that has to go into that, because you're automatically walking into the fight with an inferior weapon. A gun versus bow, a straight up, never bring a bow to a gunfight, right? So there's certain aspects and certain things and a different mindset that has to go into using a bow for a fight, such as this. There's a lot I could do. I've done a whole show on the concept of modern combat archery, but I think that was like my third or fourth show. But a lot of people think, and I know it's from TV. It's the same reason people think that when somebody gets shot, they go flying through the air. There's this common idea that, well, you don't want to use a bow for a self-defense weapon, because, when you hit somebody with it, because like on TV, the guy gets hit with an arrow and he's like, damn it, I have been hit with an arrow, and he pulls it out and he keeps fighting, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. When you're talking about arrows, just take for instance, I have some broadheads sitting right here, the Rage mechanical broadheads that open up to a little over, I think it's 2.3 inches. When they hit, they expand open to 2.3 inches. So basically what happens is, when you hit tissue with this, it opens up and creates a 2-inch long slice through the target. And if you're talking something like my recurve, my Damon Howitt recurve, or even this Odinson Archery Assassin I got sitting here next to me, either one of those bows you could hit with that arrow, it's going to be sticking out the back of you, if not go all the way through you. Okay? So what you're talking about is a 2-inch wide blade starting at your the front end of your body and coming out the back. My friends, that is a massive wound. That is basically taking a sword and ramming it through you out the other side. That is a ghastly wound. And I'm not sure you're going to be able to do any sort of trauma work that's going to be able to get you home after that. And it's funny because there's a gentleman on YouTube that did a thing about modern combat archery. Oh, you can't fight people with bows, and here's some examples. The examples he used were people that fought in like some African land or something like that. These people fight with bows, and these bows literally look like a stick with a piece of rope tied to it, and they're using nails as the arrowheads, right? Barbed sticks and nails and stuff like that. And yeah, the penetration is nothing. And yeah, those guys aren't dying. But if you're talking about an arrow that's traveling at 170 feet per second, and it hits you at a 20-yard mark where you don't even have a chance to blink, and it hits you, guess what? It's going out the other fucking side. I've shot animals before. I know what happens when they get hit with a fucking arrow. I very rarely found the animal with the arrow stuck in it. I don't know. Maybe that's just luck for me. I don't know. But I've seen animals, bears, get hit with arrows and go out the other side, and it's stuck in the ground as the bear runs off. Okay, don't look at examples of guys using primitive fucking, a log with a fucking rope attached to it and calling that a bow with nails as broadhead. That is very different than using a high quality bow such as this assassin model, using a high quality bow with a good arrow with a good razor broadhead on the end. Completely different story. And the other thing they'll say, just as I said a minute ago, right? An animal gets hit and he runs off, right? So they're like, oh, I've seen animals get hit with an arrow and they take off running, they're gone forever. And I'm like, well, yeah, he ran 60, 70 yards. Okay, that's great. The average deer, when he gets hit, is going to run about 45 miles an hour. So how far in 45 miles an hour does it take for him to get that 60, 70 yards? Doesn't take him very long, right? Now, the average human being is going to be running much less than that. Probably, if he's really hyped up, maybe at 7 miles per hour. Maybe if he's really hauling ass. Because he's going to be in an adrenal state when he gets hit. So he runs 7 miles an hour. How far is he going to make it? guys, he's not going to make it very far. So we have to understand that there's certain aspects that people don't really think about as it relates to using a bow to fight with. Plus, one of the things we talk about in our archery program is actually modern combat archery is looking for anatomical targets for instant shutdown, such as the spine. A spine shot is really, for the modern combat archer, a spine shot is really the holy grail of shots. If you've ever seen something spine shot, it's basically like giving it an epidural. It gets hit, it drops, it's paralyzed. It ain't going nowhere. A lot of people see deer get spine shot. I've seen deer get spine shot. And they'll say, man, that's completely and utterly just the most inhumane thing I've ever seen. And I've talked to doctor friends of mine. They're like, deer's not feeling anything. He's just wondering why his shit ain't working no more. He's basically received an epidural in the form of an arrow through the spine. For the modern combat archer, that's the holy grail of shots, because that means if the guy is armed with a firearm, he cannot shoot back if he's paralyzed. Hello, right? So you see what's happening here, especially if we're talking about even better shots. For just an example, I don't want to take too much into this, but for modern combat archery, we don't necessarily like headshots. One, because the arrows can deflect off of the skull. So we prefer the neck. The neck, it's very easy to get to the spine, and yes, I've seen it done on gel. Like you've seen like the Deadliest Warrior, like gel torsos with the bone and spine and everything. A direct shot through the neck with a nice expanding broadhead, a nice 2-inch broadhead that hits the spine, you could actually sever the spine right there and almost basically getting a decap. It's pretty gnarly to think about, but I've seen it done. There were some videos that were done a while back from some gentlemen who were testing that theory, and it's absolutely something that can happen. Granted, that is a precision shot, but we're talking about, I don't want to get too much into the mentality behind how we run our combat archery program, but you get the idea. I mean, there are certain things that we set up to initiate different things like that. There's certain anatomical targets that we're searching for as the modern combat archer to make our fight, our inferior weapon, become something that we can use actually on the same playing field as a firearm. So you absolutely can 100% fight with your bow if need be. It's not something that's ideal. Ideally, in a shit hit the fan situation, you're going to want to be quiet. There's not going to be anything much more quiet than a bow. It's something that you would definitely utilize. Will say this, for shit at the fan with the bow, if the bow is your primary weapon, you need to take the mentality of a sniper. 100%. You need to have superior camouflage skills, superior movement skills, and you will be an absolute terror on the field. Because there is a certain level of psychological victory that the archer can have. And I'll just give a quick example. When we've done like force-on-force training, where we'll have guys armed, obviously we weren't using sims, we were using paintball. But we'd have like a squad, working together with paintball guns. They're armed, they're moving, and they're looking for our modern combat archers. Our modern combat archers are armed with blunt tip arrows. And we're not talking about the archery tag arrows. We're talking about rubber blunt tip arrows that when you get hit, holy shit, they fucking hurt. Okay. I've got some sitting here. I've sent some to some people, and I've done some videos of us getting shot with some of them. But these are different. These particular ones are like the ones that we used before in some of the videos were kind of like small game tips. These right here are actually designed for LARP. Not LARP, but the SCA, the Society of Creative Anachronism, where they dress up like knights and shit, and they're actually made to shoot at people in armor. So these fucking things, when they hit you, even out of a 25-pound bow, you'll feel that shit in your soul. So basically what we do with the force-on-force work is have the people coming with paintball, and they're looking for you, and they're trying to find you, all this shit like that, and out of nowhere, pop, somebody gets hit with an arrow, right? and they're hit. Oh shit! Where did it come from? Contact left, contact, and they're looking to see where it comes from. They have no fucking clue. All they know is the dude just got hit with an arrow. And then if you're working with a team, guess what happens? Pink! Somebody else gets hit from a different angle. And it is a weird psychological thing to know that someone's out there, especially with the idea of the modern combat archer. One of the things that I always say for the modern combat archer is I always suggest they have a sidearm, a firearm, and that's one of the things that's gotten me a lot of shit from a lot of people in the archery community. But I'm telling them, I'm just being real here. Ideally, if it's kind of like a sniper. A sniper's goal is to not get seen, but he's also got the equipment there that if he does get seen, he can basically turn up the volume from the rate of fire, from his gunner that's with him or whatever other weapons he may have at his disposal, because he's not going to want to shoot the sniper rifle that 300 Lapua, or he's not going to want to be fucking running that, or 338 Lapua. He's not going to want to be running that, so he'll actually be using something that has a much higher rate of fire. And that's the same way that I term it with somebody having a sidearm. As a modern combat archer, there's a point where I realize once I'm compromised, I need to get a sidearm into the game or some other firearm into the game to equal things up so I can get the fuck out of there. Okay, so now one of the things some people will ask is why not just use a firearm, right? There's probably gun guys that say, this is stupid. Why not just use a gun? Why not just use a gun? All right. Well, that's an option. If you want to go through the trouble of doing that and actually going through and getting your pistol and then getting a threaded barrel for it, and then waiting to get your ATF tax stamp, and then buying your suppressor and everything, getting all that done, sure, go right ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have any problem with that at all. But you run into the same problem, right? You run into the idea of ammunition. How much ammunition can you carry? If you have to bug out, if there's a shit hit the fan situation, how much ammo do you have? If you have to leave, how much ammo can you carry with you? Can you replenish your ammo once it runs out? Well, maybe if you planned everything correctly, and if you listen to some of my shows, I've talked about different ways you can do that. But in the realm of archery, there's certain aspects you're going to find that you're going to see the bow superior even to a silenced weapon. If you listen to my episode of Modern Combat Archery, I think it was like episode 3 or 4, something like that. Way back in the day, right? I talked about the long-range reconnaissance patrols that were in Vietnam, and I think I had some pictures of them, but a lot of those guys would carry bows with them, because what they did was they found themselves at ranges to where they were basically long-range reconnaissance patrols operated in very, very small groups, and if they were spotted, and they were usually in very close proximity to the bad guys, right? Well, if they were spotted, they had to be able to very quietly take down their prey, if you want to use that term. They have to be very quiet. And yes, they did have silenced weapons, but if you've ever shot a silenced weapon, it's not silenced, it's suppressed. So you may have the sound, it may kind of sound like tin cans, kind of clinking around. And at close ranges, you can still hear it. So they found that the bow was exceptionally quiet, and they knew a lot of the things I'm talking about. These aren't things that I just came up with. They knew similar tactics to what I was talking about earlier with making shots that drop somebody with a correctly placed arrow. Okay, so if you look up, matter of fact, when they come up with the idea for Rambo to carry a bow, they actually got the idea from the Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol. So it's a little bit of fun movie facts there. So I think that's about covered it. I'm gonna go ahead and do a last call here, guys. Last call. We've been going about an hour talking about archery stuff. I can talk about archery all day, guys. There's a lot of aspects to it, but at the end of the day, if we're talking about a shit hit the fan situation, I do not see any option besides using a recurve bow for a shit hit the fan situation. As I talked about before, even with fighting with a bow, when we've done force on force work, we've had guys that have used lighter draw weight compounds versus recurves, and the disadvantage to the compound is there's kind of you pull it and then it breaks, right? With a recurve, I can actually shoot it even at half draw. You can't do that with a compound. So if I need to make a quick shot, especially if like in a life or death situation, I can do it very quickly from a recurve. So that's another little thing. But really, when you're talking about shit at the fan situation, if it's someplace where I've got a unlimited supply of arrows, I'm never gonna